Welcome to another episode of How to Adult with Travis Walker. Today's episode is all about that transition from college to adulthood. I know, everybody hates that time. But we have an incredible guest that talks all about it. He is a fraternity brother of mine. He is a recent graduate from Texas State University. His name is Aiman Baig. But before we get into the show, y'all, make sure that you are following the podcast so that you never miss another episode. Also, make sure that you like and review this podcast so I can get into the ears of people I don't know. That's the goal. With all that being said, y'all, let's get into the show and learn how to adult. All right, welcome, Aiman. Thanks you so much for being here.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Aiman actually had the idea of doing this episode about the transition from college to the real world. And I think it's a really good idea. So to start off, why did you think that this was such a good idea? Why does the How to Adult podcast need to have this as an episode?
I think every young adult about to graduate or recently graduated has like struggles early on because there's such a big difference between the college life and then the adult life that follows after. And sometimes this is probably the most common time period people have like an identity crisis, right? They're like, who am I? Because you have a group of friends who are younger than you, they're still in college and they're like partying everything. And then you'll have a set of friends who are a little bit older than you and they're talking about like investing in stocks and real estate. And there's like a big difference. And you're not sure like where you fall in, and then you're just confused, and then it's just finding a job and everything. It just gets a little stressful, and I guess I'm here to help those young adults out.
Yeah, it's huge, right? A lot of people call it the quarter life crisis for whatever reason, but a lot of people have to go through that, and it's a really hard. I would say I went through that at one point, so I think this is going to be a really good episode. All right, so before we get further into the show, let's talk about who are you? Aiman, what is your name? How old are you? What part of the world do you live in? Let's get some context on who you are.
Yeah, right. My name is Aiman Baig. I currently live in Austin, Texas. Well, technically Leander, but I tell people Austin because not a lot of people know where Leander is.
Sure.
And I bet you get that too. You're like Hutto. You're like, where's Hutto? I'm like Austin.
Yeah, it's just Austin.
It's just Austin. Yeah. So well, yeah, I went to Texas State University, fraternity brothers with the Travis Walker over here, who was the president at the time, who probably reeled me in, and it was a good time. Yeah, so I'm 23 years old, computer science graduate.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that you give me any sort of credit. We only recruit the best, and that's why you joined Delta Sig. That's awesome. So that's really cool. So you mentioned that you went to college. You mentioned that you studied computer science. I'm interested, why did you choose to go to college? Because a lot of people don't. So why did you choose to go to college?
Well, first of all, family. They were like, all right, man, it's traditional. Everyone in my family went to college. And I was like, okay, I'll go to college. And it's also like, kind of you have to. I guess you don't really have to, but you also, like, at some point you need that. Because it's not only about education, right? It's like everything else, the social life you get from college, the discipline you learn from college. It's like everything, it's kind of important for self-growth, I think, personally thinking.
Absolutely. So you went to college, you did well, you graduated with a computer science degree. What have you done since you've left college? What do you do for work and extracurriculars, or where are you at in that aspect of life?
So after I graduated, I haven't really been up to anything because I hit that quarterly life crisis, I suppose, and I was like struggling with identifying who I am, the kind of people I want to hang out with, and just a lot of struggles. Trying to find work was hard in the middle of this pandemic, so I couldn't like get myself around to do anything extracurricular or curricular, and I was just like, just playing video games all day, like eating unhealthy food and not taking care of myself, which is a big mistake because that never helps out. But But now I work as a software engineer. I would do contract positions. I'm kind of like a freelance software engineer. So I'll have companies hitting me up. They're like, hey, we have a 3-month project. We want you to do this and this. And I'll be like, okay. And so on.
That's awesome. So is it like coding? Is that what you're doing, or can you get a little bit deeper into what you're doing for these companies?
Yeah, so it will depend most of the time. So I'll do support kind of stuff. So a lot of these companies have softwares that need like updates and maintenance and all that kind of stuff to make sure their software is running smoothly. And I'll essentially do that. I'll implement and I'll run tests to see if their software is running fine or not. And if it's not, I'll like make a documentation report and send to their like full-time software department where they can be able to make those changes.
Very good, very good. Well, that's a really good place to land after all the struggle that you went through the pandemic and graduating during the pandemic and trying to find a job during the pandemic. So that sounds really interesting to me. But getting back to the topic of the transition between college and the real world, what do you think the key differences between those two eras of life, right? The era of the college and the era of getting out of college and joining the real world. What's the key difference for you that you've noticed?
For me, it was always like college has a layout, right? So you're set to go to classes every day. You know what you're expecting every day, and you have all your friends right by you all the time. But when you graduate and you move on, you maybe move to a different city. All you have is family around you. You don't really have your friends around you. And this is just in my experience when I didn't have a job. If you have a job lined up right after graduation, that's perfect. You probably want to go through the struggle. But if you don't have anything lined up afterwards, you'll go through the struggle because you don't have work, you don't have friends, and you don't have this layout, as I mentioned, that a college does, where you go to classes. So you're like, well, I need to do something, but you don't know what, and you're just applying for jobs and you don't get response, so you're just getting frustrated and you're just like confused.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think that's
that's a really tough place to be, right? And so
yeah,
the first thing you mentioned is a structure, right? In college, there is a very loose structure. You still have a good amount of freedom, but there's a structure, right? You have a very clear job, a clear role. You go to class, you get the grades, you study, you test, you do maybe you have a job, and then after college, the structure is a little bit more blurry, right? It's not
right.
as clear, and so that's one portion, the structure of life, right? What else
Mhm.
do you think? What are other key differences between those two eras?
For me, the biggest thing is consistency. Your life is very consistent in college, but right after like I said, everything's just like kind of all over the place, and there's nothing consistent. And I think that throws a human for a loop, and you're like, oh no, nothing's consistent. Who am I? What's going on? And I think it's just like a kind of domino effect. It just kind of like gets to a bigger problem unless you like solve it.
Yeah, and another thing that you mentioned was friends, right? Having friends around you. A lot of people have said, Travis, you need to do an episode on making friends, having a social life. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna do that. But just kind
Yeah.
of like a mini kind of understanding of being a young adult and trying to make friends. How did you combat that? Being graduating and then also needing to make friends. How have you combated that issue?
So that was probably one of my biggest issues was friends because I would say majority of my friends are still in college, and they also feel like they're not on the same wavelength as you because they have that structure in college, and they're also in that like I'm still in school, it's time to have fun, that kind of mentality where once you're an adult or you have a full-time job and you're like more career oriented and the goals aren't aligning. And I feel like your friends sense that from you and they also like distance themselves. So like nothing wrong with that, but I've noticed that some of my friends they'll be like, "Oh, okay, this guy's like graduated and has a job and he's an adult. Well, he probably won't hang out with us because we're college kids, so they don't talk to me as much anymore."
Yeah. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot
so
of
that
assumptions because you're in two different areas of life, and that's really hard, right?
yeah, it does suck. So it's not very nice, but yeah, I mean, you'll always have like a handful of friends, who are always there for you, who love you for who you are, not because of the situation you're in. So those friends, if you're struggling in that transition, keep them around. They'll help you out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really valuable to have friends in different areas of life. I think it makes you a more well rounded person. So
Yeah.
that's really good. So you mentioned structure, you mentioned social life, you mentioned consistency. Why are these things important in terms of developing as a young adult? Why are those things so important? Those are key differences that you mentioned, but why do we care?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how the human life is. Like, you need structure. Like, at every point in your life, you need structure. It's like your human body, if you don't have bones in you, you're just going to be a blob,
Right.
right? So you always need a structure, and consistency is a key during that transition period because it will remind you of who you are. So for me, my consistency was like, I guess I was always like a health nut, and I would go to the gym every day. So the gym was my consistent key. So before I graduated, I went to the gym, and after like all my struggles and everything, I was still going to the gym, and that kept me kind of like grounded and reminded me like, you're still the same person you were in college, and you're still the same person now. So have something that you're consistent with before and after college. It could be anything, like say painting is your hobby and you painted in college, and you're like, after you graduate, you're like, I'm an adult, I don't want to paint anymore. No, don't do that. Like, keep your hobbies. If you want to paint. Just like do stuff that reminds you that you're still the same person you were in college, and you're still the same person now, so you don't go for that little identity crisis.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm notorious for trying all the hobbies, right? I've gone
Yeah.
after everything, anything and everything just because I want something that I thoroughly enjoy. I want something that will ground me, right? If you think about
Hmm.
electricity, right? There are live wires, but there's also a grounding wire. And I think that we're talking about what grounds you as a human, which is really important. So what for you? You said that grounding wire is the gym. Is it still the gym for you?
Yeah, so it will, yes, it's still the gym for me. I think it's the only thing that has stuck by me. Like, so the consistency could be a person, it could be an activity, or it could be something like that. Um, for me, like, I thought like some of my friends would be the consistent key, but it happens, life happens,
Right.
they fall apart. So so another tricky thing with that consistency thing is like, if it breaks, it'll like put you down hard, because then you're like, I have nothing consistent anymore, and now I'm like nobody.
It's scary,
Yeah,
right?
it's super scary. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I talking about this consistent things. I had a consistent person. I was dating a person before college and after college, but that didn't work out, and that kind of like hindered me. And then I got injured while working out, and so I couldn't do that anymore for a month, and I was like thrown for a loop, and it threw me into like a dark place, which I'm super happy that I'm out of now. And yeah, life throws you like curveballs, man. You just gotta persevere.
That's super big. What you just said. You're in this dark place because of a relationship ending, and then your consistency, your thing that grounds you, you couldn't do anymore because of an injury. And so,
Mhm.
how did you pull yourself out of that dark place?
Well, first, time just heals.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get out of that dark place. I've had talking to people helps. Family, if you're close with your family, they'll always be there for you. So family helps, and it was just time and realizing that there's you are bigger than what you're feeling. Um, you know, cliche stuff like there's always light at the end of the tunnel, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
that's super deep
yeah,
and super big, right? Yeah, you are bigger than what you're going through, and that's hard. That's a hard realization to come to when you're going through it, but it's so true. You're bigger than whatever scenario is going on.
yeah, just yeah. For me, the main thing was just time and coming to terms with that you are bigger than what you're feeling through, which is fine. I think every person should like take their time battling whatever they're going through. No one should have it easy because you know, it will make you stronger for the future. It won't break
Absolutely.
you down. Yeah.
Absolutely. So changing the tone a little bit, what is the best thing about post grad life? For you, what is that one thing that is just, I love this aspect of post grad life. I couldn't do this in college. What is that thing for you?
That's a good question. I would say just like being a professional feels good, like not being a student anymore and just like taking notes in class to whereas you're actually like making an impact in the world or like a company and actually making money for it. And you have this a lot of money that you can spend for yourself, a lot of self-care going on, which is great. I would say it's like the best part of being an adult.
Yeah, disposable income is amazing, right? You don't have that during college,
Yeah.
and so that with that disposable income, you can do more things, right? Whether that's,
Yeah.
you mentioned investing earlier, you could go on trips, you can do a lot of things with that disposable income,
Hmm.
and so life gets a little bit more fun if you're intentional about it. I think, and
Right.
I think I would
Right.
agree with you. So what is an example of something that you've done post grad that you just think is awesome?
Man, like I remember the first paycheck I got, I went on like a shopping spree, and literally I would tell myself if I like something, I will buy it. And I bought, man, I don't even like want to put a price tag on the stuff I bought, but it was a lot of stuff, and it felt good, and it didn't feel like I spent too much money. It was like I deserve this, after all the struggle I've been through, I deserve all of this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of people do that with vehicles, right? They graduate college and they buy themselves a new car. So that's really cool. The first thing I bought when I got my first check was a PS4. So you can see some immaturity in
Yes.
there.
No, dude, it's never too old.
Yeah, that was so funny. And I look back and I'm like, was that the best decision? And I'm like, I still play
Yes.
today, so I guess it's still a good decision.
Perfect.
What do you think the hardest thing is about post grad life?
Restructuring, it's just adapting to a more professional lifestyle. You're not as like carefree anymore. You kind of like have to be more responsible of your actions, be more aware of what you're doing. You're more like older, you're more mature, you have relationships with the people that you care about and make sure that everything is going good.
Yeah. Why is that
It's
so? Why do we have to be more responsible as young professionals?
because like this is the starting of, I would say, like the end of college is the starting of your real life. you know
That's deep.
so
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So it's important to like start off the right way, form the right relationships, and just, yeah, I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think that you're really starting your real life. I mean, you think about your transition from high school to college, right? You lost some friends, but you gained some friends, right? The same
Yeah.
thing happens when you go from college to real world. You lose some friends, you gain some friends. You make more money, and you have to balance all that money and time and whatnot. So I think you're absolutely right. Any other hard things about post grad life?
Post hard things apart from mentioning friends and the whole new phase in your life. Uh, I don't think so. I mean, I'm still new. It's been like what, 5 months since I've been working or like been a real adult, so nothing that I can think of that's super different or difficult
Yeah.
yet. But I'm sure something's gonna kick me in the nuts soon.
You're on your way, buddy. You're on your way. I think,
Yeah.
in my experience, there are some pretty amazing things that you can that can happen in post grad life, but there's also really hard things, right? With more money and more disposable income, there's a lot of danger, right? Some people turn to things that they shouldn't be doing. Some people spend too much money. Some people, So I think money is a big portion of the conversation, but I think you've also mentioned mental health and being aware of your mental health, and that's really difficult because you can just go down and down and down and not even notice until you're in a deep dark hole. And so that's huge. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I think mental health is very, very important. It's not given enough attention. Um, the because the transition period, like I said, if you don't have anything lined up, it could be damaging over time, right? So you could. I feel like I'm still kind of recovering from like the dark place that I was in, and I'm still hoping like it all goes away, it doesn't linger around. But mental health is important now. So if you have any young friends out there who are struggling with this transition period, just reach out, be like, hey, how you doing? You don't have to be like sympathize too much, but just reach out and ask how they're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll want to talk about it.
That's huge. That's huge. So I think that's really big is that we have this circle of friends, but we are not always the best friend. We're not
Right.
always super careful and make sure that we're reaching out to them, make sure that we're, making sure that they're okay. And I think that's something that's really big that a lot of people can do better. Not even just young adults. I think adults in general, reach out to that person that you care about. If you want to talk to them, reach out to them. That's huge. The phone works both ways, and that
Right.
people tend to forget that for sure. So if I'm a college student and I'm listening to this podcast right now, what can I expect to continue? We talked about consistency, we talked about structure. What can I expect to continue from my college to real world transition?
I would say like don't go in with an expectance. Like don't expect something. Like adult life is a lot different than college life, so be ready for some curveballs that's going to be thrown at you. Don't get too comfortable
Yeah.
just yet. Yeah, and take on a challenge, man. Like be ready for a challenging life, and it will be worth it. It will be worth it, but you also need to like work for it.
That's so big, right? You've got to stay
Yeah.
with that mindset of no one owes you anything, right? Your professors don't
Mm-hmm.
owe you a grade, right? Or they don't owe you a high grade, at least they owe you some type of grade. And just like your boss, right? They don't owe you anything other than a paycheck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to be able to go into the real world and be able to perform, just like in college you have to perform. In the real world, you have to perform. I think that's really big. Would you say that you've experienced what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, it's the same thing, but it's just something about college is easier than real life.
Right,
I don't than the adult life. I don't know how to say it because like I've said, you're more responsible of yourself. You get that
right.
feeling now. You're like, I'm an adult. I've done my part of going to school. Now it's time to work and contribute to like maybe my family or myself, and just start settling down, maybe
Yeah.
starting a family. So these are just the big transitions that you need to be ready about.
Yeah, there's definitely a safety net feeling when you're in college, right? If you fail a course, you can always take that course again. Right.
Right.
If you fail your in your job, that you might have a little bit higher repercussions, right? You may not have
Mm-hmm.
a chance to redo that project or redo that assignment that you were doing. And so that's really big and something that I think college students should definitely think about. And so just sticking with this same topic, we talked about what college students can expect to have after graduation. What can they definitely not count on to continue?
Just like having the same fun lifestyle. Like your time, you don't have much time anymore. You're working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, right? And you just don't have time to talk to your friends much anymore. You just don't have time to like go out and just drink anymore. Um, so this kind of, I think, working as an adult also kind of like slows you down in a way.
Right.
You're not the same party animal you used to be. Like that eagle. So you're not that eagle you used to be. You're just a you're turtle.
Yeah.
like I call myself.
I think something that definitely changed for me, and I think a key thing that we've been talking about here is you have to be a lot more intentional when you're in when you're in adult, like real world, right?
Hmm.
In college, you don't have to be intentional at all, right? If you want to see your friends, you just go to chapter, you go to the bar, you see your friends, right? It's really simple. But if you want to see your friends out in the real world, you have to be super intentional. You have to reach out to them. You got to say,
Yeah.
hey, next weekend let's have a game night. Hey, next weekend let's
Right,
go to the
yeah.
bar. All right, and so
That's
that's
funny you
huge.
mentioned that. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Because like I remember in college, you don't ask your friends to hang out. You just show up at their place and just grab them. Like, all right, we're going out. But now you have to like take reservations. You're gonna be like, all right, August 27th, I need to book you for a brunch. It's funny. Um, yeah.
That's
So it's
hilarious
good.
because it's
Yeah.
absolutely true. Like I have to put it on my calendar that I'm hanging out with this person on this day at this time. Otherwise, I'll either forget or I won't. It won't happen. Like
Yes.
because life takes over.
Right. I mean, I was never the type of person to use a calendar. So during entire my college life, never used a calendar or a planner in my entire life. I just kind of like did things on the whim. Bad idea. Uh, so do that if you're still in college. Make sure you have like you're planning your stuff out because it'll help you transition. Because once I graduated and I'm an adult now, you don't get to do things on the whim, and other people who are also adults don't do things on the whim anymore. So like even if I was the same person, say you're more organized now, and I'd be like, hey Travis, want to go grab a drink tonight? And you'll be like, no, because you're busy with work. And then like I'll be like, oh, he hates me. And that's not good for you. You're like, in your brain, that's not good for you because you don't hate me, you're just busy.
Right.
So yeah, and it's hard to realize at first, but yeah, man, other people are also working. They're busy with lives, and you need to realize that, and you need to kind of like get on the same level.
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? And we tend to think that people that are busy are ghosting us, or they hate us, or they don't want to hang out with us.
Hmm.
But that's not really true. And the example I think of is especially during COVID, right? A lot of people that were like COVID conscious, that were scared of it, or they wanted to do the right thing, or whatever. When people asked them to hang out, they said no, right? That didn't mean that they didn't like you. That just meant that they were just being COVID conscious. They wanted to make sure that they were protected, their families were protected. And I think that transitions into normal life as well because, people aren't saying no because they don't like you. They're saying no because they have something going on. And I think that's what you're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Nice.
so yeah, nothing like personal, just a busy person, and especially like as a young adult when you're more busy trying to figure yourself out and where you're gonna move on from here. Like, all right, I just started my job as so and so, and my next steps are like climbing the ranks, and you're more career oriented. I think every adult would agree that when you start your first job, you like everything kind of like you shove to the side, and you because once you start your first job, you realize like what it means to you and what it could mean for your future. So you're more focused on it, and you kind of push everything to the side. And but when you like also someone tries to reach you out and you shove them to the side, that's not good because you also need that social balance, I think, which is really important. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. Be career oriented, but also schedule a brunch with your friend every once in a while.
Yeah. So my question while you were talking is you mentioned that people that are young adults, they're right out of college, they're right out of school. You said that they're more career oriented. Do you think that's the way it should be, or do you think that's just the way that society has trained us to be once we get out of college? Should we be more career oriented or career focused when we get out of college?
It depends on the person, I would say. Like, if you want to be that person, if you want to be like the next Elon Musk, like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is probably, as the young adult, the most important part of your life, starting your career, right? Because this is where you figure out what you want to do and who you want to be.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a career would help you a lot with understanding who you are and who you want to be.
That's totally fair.
But if yeah,
I think that's totally fair. I think a lot of people are career oriented. I would agree with you on that. And, you know, for some people, it's definitely a detriment, right? They're so career focused that they neglect every other area of your life. It's really
yeah,
important to be a little bit more well rounded. What does that mean to you?
it's really important to be well rounded because if you're career oriented, like that's the only thing you do, and it doesn't work out for you, that's so bad for you,
Right.
like so bad. Because then, like when you turn back and you try to like reach out to the friends who tried to reach out to you and you denied them, they'll deny you, and then it doesn't feel good, and you're just upset, and then
Right.
the dark place is back again.
Right. And it goes back to kind of where we started this episode, which is you mentioned the word identity, right? If you're so career
Right.
oriented and that's all you care about, that your identity is your career, right? And then we
Mm-hmm.
have to reflect on, okay, do I want my identity to be found in my career? When people think of Travis Walker, do I want them to just think teacher? Or do I want them to think good friend or good husband or you know all of these things? And I think that's super important. Is that if you're too career oriented, it begins to take over your identity. Do you think that's a problem, or do you think I'm making something out of nothing?
No, it's true. I mean, identity is something that everyone is trying to find out of college. I think, like, regardless if you have a job lined up or not, I'm pretty sure as soon as you graduated and you got a job as a history teacher, you may have had a thought in your like, do I really want to be a history teacher? Or like, yeah, I want to be a history teacher.
Yeah, I
There's
think it's
always a
huge, right? I didn't
yeah,
know, and a lot of people
hmm
don't know.
yeah. These questions always linger in your brain, and it's hard to say. Like, you just gotta deal with it. You just gotta go through it. The crisis is always solved. The identity crisis is always solved, and you will find who you are. It might suck, but you will find who you are.
Yeah, I think about my experience with buying my first car. You know, I didn't just walk up to the first truck that I saw and said, "Yep, I'm buying this one." No, they let me take a
Mm-hmm.
test drive, right? And so I think
Yeah.
that that can be compared to our experience with getting out of college, which is getting that first job and giving it a little test drive, right? See how it goes, see how you like it. And if you like it, you can stick around. If you don't like it, well, there's a thousand other industries, right? There's millions of other jobs that you can take on, and so I think it's really important that some people are so scared that they don't even try, right? And that's
Yeah.
dangerous. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's very true. Like, I think that's another thing that I had a problem with. Was I graduated with computer science, so I thought I had to do something
Right.
with computer science. Like, I am doing something related to computer science, but if someone who doesn't like it but graduated with that degree doesn't mean you have to do it. Like, you could switch to something else. Like, you could go to sales. Sales doesn't need a degree. You just need to talk good.
Right.
You just need to be charismatic, and you need to sell stuff. If you're good at that, but you have a degree in like art, like, just might as well switch over. And if you don't like art, just switch over or find something that you love. And I've noticed that lately, or like in recent years, a lot of people who graduate with a degree don't necessarily follow up with it.
Yeah. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people do that now because it's more about the piece of paper rather than what's written on the piece of paper, right? My degree is not in education. My degree is in public relations and mass communication. And so that's a really good message to put out there. And I'm glad that you said it because a lot of people are stuck in college. They're too late in their degree and they think they have
hmm
to do something. You don't have to do anything. Get your degree, and right, and then start your career and where you want to be. That's huge. I think it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, so I remember this one point I was like not enjoying computer science at all, and I called my mom. I was like, "Hey, I am switching my major," and she was like, "You graduate in 2 semesters. Like, what do you mean switch your major now?" I was like, "I just don't enjoy it anymore," and she was like, "Just graduate and then decide what you want to do. If you want to switch over to something else, then you could like take an online course and then figure yourself out from there." So, but I ended up, sticking out with it and with a job in the software engineering, which I like now. So another thing, I don't know if it's the same with all majors, is that the education is a lot different than real world, right? So what you study, they teach you what it is, but they don't teach you how to use it.
Mm, yes.
So if you can figure out how to use it and then enjoy it, perfect. But if you figure out how to use it and be like, oh well, this is not what I thought it was going to be in college, then you could consider switching to a different career path.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk to a lot of teachers because I am a teacher, and the teachers that went the traditional route, which is, you go to college for education, you do all of your coursework and whatever. And the way I did it, which is an alternative certification, which means I learned on the job rather than in a classroom. If you think about it, really, those people that went the traditional route learned about classroom management in a classroom, like learning from a teacher, whereas I learned classroom management as a teacher in the classroom. And so this is different, right? It's almost like an apprenticeship where you are actually
Oh,
doing the thing to get qualified to do the job. And I think that more people need to go that route, because you actually get to do it. You actually get to try what's going on. Do you think that's a
hmm
winning model? Or do you think college
I
is
think
the more winning
so.
model?
No, I like what you said. The apprenticeship model is works far better because you're actually learning how to do your job rather than like what it is. So, what's better, learning to be a teacher or learning what a teacher does?
Ooh, good.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. A teacher teaches, like, okay, but like how? How do you manage a classroom? How do you handle a rowdy kid in the classroom?
right.
All that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that go behind the curtain,
Yeah, that's huge.
which you need to understand. Yeah.
That's huge. I absolutely agree with you. So I'm going to go into a few subtopics of this transition, and we can just talk about these subtopics and figure out what we think about them. The first thing that I want to talk about is just broadly the job hunt, right? Let's talk about. I know. Let's talk about interviewing. Let's talk about resume. Let's talk about cover letter. What was your experience with the job hunt?
Ah, man, the worst. Like, it was very, very stressful. I think it took me like 4 to 5 months to like figure out how the job market works. So you need a perfect resume, one, and you need to have connections. Need, like, capital need. Find your connections now. Like, it could be your uncle, it could be your girlfriend's dad, it could be anyone. Form connections, very, very important. And a lot of like companies, they don't like look at job applications because they just get so many. So try to reach out to the recruiter and work with the recruiter, and they will help you find a job better than just straight up applying.
Right.
You
So
know?
did you work with a
Yeah,
recruiter?
yeah. I work with the recruiter. He specifically finds those contract positions for me, which works out great because a lot of companies are adapting to that contract kind of positions. Like, I know Apple is doing that a lot, and almost in every department, not only like tech department. So Apple in like HR or anything, what they'll do is, so they'll go to a third party or the middleman, recruiter. They will, or it's a company that provides a recruiter for you. So basically, the job posting comes from this company,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll apply to that job through that company. So Apple pays this company, and this company takes a percent cut of that pay, and then they'll pay you. So you're technically on the middleman's payroll, not on Apple's payroll, but you're working for Apple,
Yeah, that makes
if that
sense.
makes sense. Yeah. So a lot of companies are doing that because they don't want to work. Apple doesn't want to get someone full time. They want to do like a quick contract position and then next person, hello. So they're kind of like in a fast pace, like they're like maximizing efficiency that way. So they're not paying too much money when they're not gonna pay someone who's not gonna work. Like, say you're a elementary school teacher, but imagine being paid in the summer, right? It doesn't work like that.
Right. Right. So yeah,
Yes.
teachers get paid for 10 months and they spread it out over 12 months. And so that definitely makes sense, right? If we were to get paid for 2 extra months, it would be people would have question marks for that. That's absolutely fair. Um so what was your experience with like forming a resume? Did you just open a Word document or did you have a designer or what was your experience with that?
I've had everything. I had a like a Word document, which I just typed everything on my own, designing on my own, and I looked at it. I was like, "This is ugly," and then I go to like it. So I go to like a design or a website that has like pre-designed resumes where you just fill in your information and you fill it in, and you end up seeing that you don't have enough experience to fill in this template, so you're just like it looks really empty all of a sudden, and then you're like, oh no, so I need to find another template. So it's just a whole struggle. And then what I did was just like look up a Google image of your job that you're looking for. So say like a financial analyst. So look up a financial analyst resume, and then you'll see a bunch of examples and use kind of like that format and fill in yourself in it instead of John Doe.
Yeah. John
Yeah.
Doe. Yes, yes. Yeah, that's really good advice, I think. The templates online are really helpful. The templates online are even helpful with not even just the design aspect, but just, filling in that empty space, right? I didn't know I could put reward or like the awards that I've won, right? Or finding those
Yeah.
filler things that make your resume look a little bit more full. That's really important. And a lot of people struggle with that, not having enough experience and then not being able to fill a page. That's huge. So that's really good advice.
Yeah. I mean, I would also say like put anything related to your job, regardless it was education or not, in your resume. So like, when I was 10, I made a game, right, which I never thought I would put on my resume, and then I put that on my resume. And then this one time, this recruiter reached out and was like, "Yeah, I saw on your resume that you made a game, and there's this game company looking for someone like that." And I was like, I didn't tell that person I was like in 10th grade when I made that, but I was like, yeah, I made a game. And then you go on from there. So it's those little things, anything related to your job field, regardless if it's what you studied for, if it's not an internship, it's okay. If you worked on it on your own time, put it on there because they want to see that you're capable of doing it. They don't care if like you have professional experience, especially when you're a young adult. They wouldn't really care about a professional experience. They want to see if you're capable of doing the job they throw at you.
Yeah, for sure. I think any connection is a good connection, right? Even if it seems irrelevant, it may be relevant to some recruiter out there. So that's really big. I have two more subcategories, and then we'll get into the end of the show. But they're kind of big topics, so we'll see how it goes. The first thing is money. How do you handle your money?
Dude, I don't know. I'm not handling my money well, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying every moment of it at this point. It's not very good, but I don't know. Like, I think talking about investing seems like a good way to handle your money, but also, like, you're not going to invest a lot on a 2-month paycheck, right?
Right.
Yeah, so just don't get too free with your money. Like keep it. It's hard to say. Like I've gotten like very few paychecks. So it's hard to say how I manage my money yet. But it's just I don't know. It's hard to say. It's just be smarter.
Be smart, research. I think there's a period of time in young adulthood where you can be a little bit more irresponsible, right? I mean, my first paycheck, I bought a PS4. That's not the best use of my money, but there's a period of time where it's new, it's fun, it's cool, and so I think that there is a time period. So if you're in that, it's normal, but know that period of time has to end at some point. So that's really big, and I think that's really good. My other category that I want to talk about is housing. What's your situation with housing? How do you find housing in a way that makes sense?
So, well, I'm currently living with my parents in Leander, and I do this because I got student loans to pay.
Right.
And instead of paying, monthly rent, I'm like putting that monthly rent money towards my student loans.
Good.
Yeah, I think it's one of your ways to manage your money, I guess, would be like if you want to go back to your parents, there's nothing wrong in that. Save some money, pay some student loans, and go on from there. Maybe like in the future, when you're ready to be independent completely on your own, then you can move on. So that's that. And housing in Austin is just a whole different breed right
Oh,
now.
it's
So
terrible. It's terrible. And I
yeah, it's
completely
so
agree with you.
bad.
And I want to make this a really clear point. It is okay to get help, right? It is okay to
Yes.
move in with your parents. I know a lot of people have a lot of struggles with this. It is okay. You can go home,
Hmm.
save some money. My wife and I, we lived with her parents for a year, right? And we were able to save a bunch of money. We were able to buy a house at 22 and 23 years old. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have her parents' help for a year. And so it is okay to go home and live with your parents for a little while. Save that money. Be financially responsible. I think you said you didn't know much about your money. I think that's very financially responsible. So it's a good job.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
Thank you.
Because the two top expenses, or I know one of the two top expenses that everyone has is housing. And so if you can cut that out,
Hmm.
boom, you're there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so like, just think about the rent from an apartment or a house you get. At this time, like, I think real estate everywhere is kind of like just high up, and the just furnishing a brand new place, and minimum, I would say, is like at least
That's
$6,000.
huge.
Yeah, it's very huge. So like, ask for help. See if you can stay at your parents for like a few months until you figure out your living situation, or if you're currently living with a roommate, stay with them for a few more months. Like, pay that $600 a month rent
Yeah.
for a bit until you're like fully able to live on your own.
That's huge. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So let's get into the closing questions of the show. My first question is for somebody out there that is going through what you're going through, the transition from college to adulthood. What is your number one piece of advice for that person?
I would say be ready for all the challenges that come to you. A job, you might not get a job in the first week of you graduate, not in the first month, maybe not in the first 3 months. So just be ready, be patient, and have that consistent key to keep you grounded, to remind you who you are. That I think that's one of the biggest things for me. Like, I wish everything for me was consistent. Like, I tried to make it as consistent as possible, but it never works out. I mean, it will work out. For me, it didn't, which is fine, but it could work out for someone else. So make sure you have that consistent keys, and just be prepared. And this is a whole new world you're stepping into.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, and being
so
challenged is okay. I think that's another thing. Like you said that it's a very challenging time, and I think that's okay. People are scared of being challenged. Like it's okay. Like that's part of
no,
life.
it's a good kind of challenge
Yeah,
though. Like, you're kind of excited to take it on. People are so excited. You're like, finally done with college. We're like, okay, but it's not gonna be easy from here on. It will be challenging, but in a good way, because it will turn you into a better person and a more successful person. No one thinks of a successful college student. Everyone thinks of a successful adult. So
dang.
you gotta, yeah.
All right, all right. I like that. Okay. So my next question is, what is something not related? I guess it can be related, but not related to the transition from college to adulthood. What is something else that you're trying to figure out as a young adult?
Oh, spirituality, stuff like that. Yeah. So it's like that transition is not only like that education to financial transition. It's a whole new, like, you. This is that's a different life. This is a whole new life. So that identity thing comes with literally everything that you can think of, like spirituality, and like, it's just figuring stuff out. Like, do I want kids? Do I not want kids? That kind of stuff just like roll through your head, and it's very, very interesting phase that people would stumble upon.
Yeah.
And
That's big.
yeah.
I haven't gotten that answer yet. Spirituality. I think it's a really good answer that we're gonna have to do an episode about. Figuring out how do I be spiritual? How do I connect to my faith or my spirituality? As a young adult, I think that's really big. So that's cool. If people want to learn more about Aiman, where do I go? Where can I find you?
Well, my Instagram is Aiman.Baig. I could just send you what it looks like, or you could just, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'll
there's my
put your
Instagram
tag in
handle.
the description. Everything is going to be good. You got to follow at Aiman Baig. He's got all of the pictures, so that's really cool. Anything else that we need to close on Aiman?
No, I think we touched every base. Yeah, it was good talking to you about everything, and I hope that every young adult listening to this learned something from this and is ready to take on that battle.
That's awesome. I absolutely agree. So make sure that you are following the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at HowToAdultTW. If you're feeling awesome, you're feeling frisky, you can donate to the podcast. That would be cool. I agree with that. And then also, y'all, make sure that you're following the podcast. And together, we're going to learn how to adult.